wearing a hat today because I haven't washed my hair in a few days and it's kind of obvious. Doesn't quite match wearing a cardigan. There's a bit of my hair. This is the Sanctus Forum, and I am Michael Stewart Robb, better known as Mike. And I've got here an old book that I found on my bookshelf. I didn't actually have to look for it. I knew where it was. It's my Bible that I used for, I don't know, 10 years. And as you can see, it's not doing so well. And I will get to that later because we're talking here about the shadow side of Jesus' spirituality. And just a couple videos. The first video, if you didn't see it, was, I don't know, came out maybe last week. You can look around on the channel for it. And there I talked about this aspect of Western spirituality that we don't really like often, and it's the sort of thing we don't exactly tell outsiders about. And I just kind of thought, well, I might as well just tell everybody what's going on here. That aspect is evangelism, and this is going to be the first attempt to sort of explain how this really does fit into Western spirituality, because at least I myself needed to do some rethinking to make sense of it. So the first thing that I really need to point out, and this is just something that needs to be said across all of these videos, is that evangelism is not the same as converting people. Now, conversion is the sort of thing that happens all the time. Probably most people in their life have gone through some sort of conversion, and it's not something that's typical for the Western tradition. Doesn't just happen to Jesus's people. It's just something that happens in life. And secondly, conversion is something that does happen to Jesus's people. People do convert to Jesus's spirituality, and that's just kind of a part of it. But that's not what evangelism is. It's not some sort of science in which we learn how to get people to convert, or it's not, evangelism doesn't fail if people don't convert. It's still something that can happen and be happening very well, even if conversion is not happening. But to understand evangelism and my beat up Bible and what I have to say about that, we first need to back up. So at the heart of Western spirituality is the idea that humanity is messed up and needs reformed. And you can personalize that and should personalize that. I am messed up and need reformed. So the central question for Western spirituality is, have you experienced this reform? Have I experienced this reform? Are we experiencing it? Where is it happening? Who is it happening to? Where are people for whom it's taken place and is taking place? Where can we find them? Where can we find places where it's happening, churches or whatever? This is the primary thing. This is what Jesus's friends should be about. This is what they should be asking themselves. I said in the last video that Western spirituality is not primarily about evangelism, and it really isn't. This is what it's about. It's about this reform that happens from people who are messed up to people who are, let's say, picked up, put back together. Now, what that means is that there is a real difference in you. When that happens, there's a real difference in people, in individuals, in me and in you, and that's really what Western spirituality is aiming at. With that in mind, this is how evangelism works in Western spirituality. This reform that's maybe happening in you, that you have experienced, that other people are experiencing, that you can find people for whom it has happened, this real difference that has taken place. This is seen by others. And it's really not something that you have to make a big deal about it. It's something that actually just happens naturally for the most part. And that's, in a sense, if you want a phrase for what evangelism is and what I'm trying to say in this video, it's that evangelism is showing. Jesus said in really his best message, which is called the Sermon on the Mount. Usually he says to the people who are listening to him, "You are the light of the world." And the idea is that it's just something that they do. They don't have to go find light. They don't have to tell people about light, sort of point out that light can be found or talk about it in theoretical terms. It's just something that they are by virtue of who they are. And that's because there's a real difference taking place. Now, I will say, and I could just talk for a long time about that, a good part of what this real difference is the presence of God in you. It's not some sort of moral formation, self-help program in which we sort of, learn the wisdom and tricks and tools of changing ourselves, but that God's presence comes and is with us, and that actually provides the power needed to go through this reform process and not be so messed up and be put back together again. Now, this is where kind of the Bible thing gets into this book that I found that was, you can see it was important to me. There's many things that could be said about why this book is falling apart as it is. One reason is because I just would throw it into my backpack and take it everywhere. And another thing you could probably say is it wasn't the best built book to begin with. But of course, another thing that you can say is that I actually did read this book. I read it often, I read it a lot, and that's why it does look the way that it does. And what's happening there is not that, I'm showing that I'm some kind of super saint by having a beat up Bible. It's that I'm taking my own medicine. That's in a sense what this is. It's as if I was showing you a pillbox which was sort of falling apart, and that's because I was using it so much because I had so many pills to take and I took them regularly. And that's really the heart of how evangelism is going to work in Western spirituality. It's that the people who are interested in it actually take what Western spirituality offers. They take their own medicine. They go through some kind of reform process, which may look like reading a book like the Bible many times over until it falls apart and you have to get a new one. I don't actually use this one anymore. I have moved on because it's not about having a beat up Bible. It's about having a put together self. And the same with medicine. I mean, the point of medicine is not more medicine. The point of medicine is health. And health is an excellent word for what we're trying to talk about here. The idea is that people who are Jesus's friends experience a new level of health, or a different level of health, or that they're just healthy. And that's something that becomes obvious to other people. And that is to say, it's the sort of thing that's contagious. Now, it's just not contagious if you don't let it happen to you. You have to, this is getting away from this metaphor of illness, and it's getting away from this metaphor of health, but something is contagious because it just sort of spreads naturally. You've got it, and it just enters into other people because you've got it, and that's the sort of thing that it is. So, if you wish, evangelism isn't something you have to worry about in Western spirituality. Maybe in other forms of spirituality and life philosophy and other worldview kinds of things, other religions, you have to worry about it a whole lot more. But in Jesus's form of spirituality, it's not something you have to worry about. If you're going to worry about something, worry about this idea of being messed up and needing reform. And if you worry about that primarily, then evangelism will happen almost automatically. Well, glad to think about this with you. Thanks for showing up. Make sure that you have subscribed if you haven't. And, there's like buttons which you can, actually push with your finger and not just sort of feel. And that helps other people find videos like this. See you next time. time for that shower.